Expressing your love can look many different ways. And with the right jewelry gift from Blue Nile, it can truly sparkle. Blue Nile's collection of classic diamond jewelry makes for the kind of gift that speaks volumes without saying a single word. Or switch things up with a sapphire piece sure to spark conversation. Either way, Blue Nile's Diamond Guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Express yourself with Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Want to stay up to date on the biggest stories in pop culture and entertainment? Then be sure to check out the TMZ podcast. I'm Charlie Cotton from TMZ, the TV show, and every day I'll sit down with a member of our news team to give exclusive breakdowns of the day's most talked about headlines, stories we break, and the stories you care about. So check out the TMZ podcast, Monday through Friday, and the other podcasts from the TMZ audio network like Last Days and TMZ Verified, available on all podcast platforms.
I've been in dogs since 1991. We breed dogs that we want to train. I was out here in western Nebraska riding Harleys and training dogs. I don't sugarcoat anything, and if you don't like it, tough.
Welcome to episode number 6 of the Flatlander Kennels Podcast with Chris Jobman. We are going to jump into this one real quick. The main content, this is going to be an awesome one. We are going over Chris's flow chart. If you did not listen to last episode, he talked all about puppies, how to get your dog ready to the point where the dog goes to the trainer. And so take it away, Chris.
Hi, guys. Chris Jobman with Flatlander Kennels. Thanks for listening. Hi, Elliot. How are you tonight?
Doing great.
Episode 6. We're on a roll. Let's talk. The last episode, we talked puppies. We critiqued you a little bit, you and Georgie, on your YouTube, on your blinds. And we talked puppies and how to, what to expect and what to buy and what we'd like to see when they come into the kennel and that sort of thing. And now let's talk about, hey, your dog is in training right now. Your dog is at Flatlander Kennels. What is in store for your dog? What are the steps to building a badass, right? So we're going to go through the flow chart. Now, the flow chart is and everybody says, oh, I don't want one of these fancy field trial dogs. I just want a hunting dog, gun dog, and I want it to run blind retrieves. Okay. That's fine. It's the same steps. A gun dog and a hunt test dog or a field trial dog, to teach a dog to handle and that's what we're going to we're not going to get into all the marking and stuff on this, when do triples and delayed triples and doubles. We're not going to get into that. We're going to get into the flow chart on how to teach a dog to handle. And at that same time, what are they doing for marking? Whether they're running singles, they're starting to run some small doubles. But it's to build a gun dog and a hunt test field trial dog, it's the same steps. So all these people that say they don't want a fancy field trial dog or hunt test dog, well, yes, you do. You just don't know it yet. But so let's just say you brought your dog into the kennel and the dog's 6 months old. You've enrolled it in training, and you tell us, hey, we're going to do what this dog can do. I want to see it reach its potential. I want a Grand Hunting Retriever champion, and I want a Master National Hunter. And let's just see what we can do. And I said, okay, no big deal. Let's go. So you get the dog in. The first thing we do with the dog is we don't know it very well, of course. We just try to build a rapport with it. And Julie, who works for us right now, Julie Mitchell, she is fantastic at doing this. She takes the puppies and she does now, and I'll just tell you kind of how it works at the kennel before we get into all this. I don't do the obedience and force fetching, collar conditioning, and forced apply. I don't do that anymore. I'm too busy with the advanced dogs. Julie and Andrew, they handle all the building blocks of our dogs. They do all the obedience, collar conditioning, force fetch, all the pile work, all the yard work, and they do a fantastic job. And then Ryan and Andrew, they share the building blocks of the early advanced dogs, and then I take all the advanced stuff. But Julie, like, she is so good with these puppies. So we get them in, and we don't start, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just, here, we're just going to do obedience right now. We're just going to start slapping a collar on a dog and going. We don't do that. We do very, very light obedience at first, and we throw a lot of birds for them. We try to get them comfortable with us, comfortable with the kennel, throw birds, get their prey drive going, get them rocking and rolling. And once that happens, and they love birds and they love to do it, then we start doing our formal obedience. And I personally liked the Wonder Lead. It was a Delmar Smith thing, and what it is if anybody knows what a piggin string is or that sort of thing, it's a real hard lariat type rope, and I liked doing that obedience with that when I was doing obedience and stuff. I liked that, the Wonder Lead. Julie, she likes to use the pinch collars, and she's really good with them. I'm not very versed on a pinch collar very well, but she does those, and she's really pretty good at the pinch collar. So she uses a little bit of a pinch collar. Now, guys, relax. It's not hurting the dog. It just gives a little bit of discomfort when they pull in, that sort of thing. Not that big a deal. But we just do, formal obedience, heel, sit, here. We don't say stay. Stay doesn't mean anything in our vocabulary. Sit means sit till I tell you to do something different. We do use place boards. We teach them to place. We do all those things. And we don't use treats at this stage in the game. Now, what we do is when the obedience is done, the sessions is done, they'll give them a little milk bone or something, before they go back in their kennel or whatever. But we just do the formal obedience. We typically teach them to heel on the left. And we walk in obedience. We just basically walk a figure 8 pattern, teach them to heel and here. And when you turn to the right, it's here. When you turn to the left, it's heel for a left heeling dog. And once we get our obedience is pretty solid, they don't have to be a rock star. Then we get into collar. We do collar conditioning next. I know a lot of people do force fetch next, but to me, and I did force fetch second back in the day, a long time ago. But to me, there was always, it might just be me, but it's in my head. There was always a disconnect. So at the end of force fetch, you have collar fetch, right? So at the end of force fetch, you have collar fetch. Well, in my very simple mind, how can you teach a dog to collar fetch unless it's collar conditioned? So it didn't.
And collar fetch is just force fetch, just using pressure with the e-collar.
Using the e-collar. You say instead of ear pinching it, you say fetch, and you use the e-collar to make it fetch. So that's collar fetch. And in my mind, how can you expect a dog to fetch using the e-collar and collar fetch when it's not even collar conditioned? So, and for people that are just learning all this, collar conditioning is you put an e-collar on them and you reinforce already known commands with the collar. Sit, here, heel, those sort of things. So you use the e-collar for already known commands. An e-collar has never taught a dog to do anything. It's just a reinforcement tool. So already know obedience is pretty solid. Now you can collar conditioning. So what I do is I collar condition second. Here, heel, sit, all those things, and I teach them to shut off the collar pressure, right? I teach them to do all those things. So then when we get into force fetch, we teach them hold first, of course, and then when we get into force fetch, we use the ear pinch. We have used the toe hitch before on dogs that are really, really tough that don't open their mouth when you pinch their ears. They will not open their mouth. They just won't do it. They're very, very tough. So we do the toe hitch on those dogs to kind of get them to open their mouth to show them what we want, and then we try to move to the ear pinch. Now Julie does it up on the table. We have a real nice force fetch table. She does it on the table. Back in the day when I did it, I didn't even use a table. I just was on the ground. I just was walking down the kennel, and I was doing it on the ground. And I was a much younger man. And I remember one winter, I was force fetching just before I had assistance or anything. I was force fetching 19 dogs by myself in a single day. I had 19 dogs in force fetch.
And keeping your calm the whole time?
Yes, as much as I possibly could. And that's why my lower back is garbage, honestly. And I didn't like to use a table because there's always a disconnect going from the table to the ground. Now you got to teach them all to do that on the ground. So I said, why? So in my little pea brain, why am I using a table when we go to the ground and we have to fight them on the ground? Why don't I just go on the ground and be done with it? So that's what I did. And in one winter, I was force fetching 19 dogs at once. That was miserable. So now we go. Now we're completely collar conditioned. Then we go to force fetch. So that's why we collar condition first, because at the tail end of force fetch, you do your collar fetch, which is you substitute the ear pinch for the e-collar, and you say fetch, Nick, fetch, and you get them to reach for the bumper. So in my mind, that is a more seamless way to do it, and there's no disconnect because now you don't have to quit force fetching to collar fetch so that you can, you don't have to quit force fetching so you can collar condition before you collar fetch. Does that make sense? So You're already collar conditioned. You go through force fetch, you just roll right into collar fetch. And there's no disconnect. It's all one seamless roll, right? So, and then while we're doing that, and then depending on the dog, we still like to throw birds for them in the kennel and bumpers and that sort of keep their prey drive going and keep them happy. There is just some dogs, and there is no if, ands, way, but about it. You start collar conditioning and force fetch, they will quit retrieving. They're done. They don't want nothing to do with it. They hate it. They hate their life. That's just all there is to it. They just don't want anything to do with it. Those dogs you got to be really careful of. And those dogs you really need to slow down and do two or three sessions a day instead of one 15-minute session or two 15-minute sessions. Do 3 5-minuters. Real quick, real positive. Get in and get out. That'll save their mentality on doing sort of these things.
Do you stop throwing retrieves during the force fetch time?
It all depends on the dog. There are some dogs that we do, and there are some dogs that once they know hold and they can hold it really well, we don't. We throw them for them after their sessions are over to keep their attitude up. And there are some dogs that no matter how well you taught hold, for some reason you throw that bird or bumper, they want to drop it. And then now you're not working on force fetch anymore, you're back working on hold. So it's a catch-22. It all depends on the dog. And I've seen Julie do it, and I have done it both ways. I've done it both ways. Typically, though, I will tell you, we don't go to the field with those dogs that are in force fetch. If we throw any marks for them, it's just fun stuff inside the kennel building to get their attitude up. We don't take them to the field and throw marks for them. I think with a lot of dogs, I think that's really counterproductive. I think you're asking them to do something in the building, and then they're doing something different in the field, and then they're getting in trouble in the field and not in the. I think it's very counterproductive. So, but there are some dogs that you have to keep throwing stuff for, or their attitude will go to crap. So, we've got obedience down. Now, I'm not talking, when I say obedience, I'm not talking like the obedience trials that you see. I'm talking good on-leash obedience. Collar conditioning went really well. They're snappy. They respond. They know how to turn off the pressure. We've moved into force fetch. That's all really good. They come into heel really nice. They're holding it nice. Collar fetch is done. Everything's real snappy. Once that's done, then we move to the field. But before we started all that, we've started them in the field. We've started throwing marks for them. We got them liking birds. We've done all these things. Now we move to the field. And that's where we start getting them steadied up. And a lot of times these dogs' attitudes aren't the greatest. Let's just face it. They call it force fetch for a reason. And their attitudes aren't the greatest. So now some of these dogs have to be built back up. And that's when we start throwing real marks for them. We get a bird boy in the field. Hey, throw a mark, go get it. Now, once you're done with that, you may have a weird transition from we do all of our, those first 3 deals. We do all of those things inside of a building. And now we are about, depending on the dog, a dog that went through it really pretty good, we're about 2 months in. Out of force fetch, we're about 2 months in. A dog that struggled and that we had to back off and slow down, we're about 3 months in. And I'll be honest.
And you normally start this about month 5, month 6 is where you normally get them back and start it, right?
6 months old.
Okay, so you're at about 8 months old now.
Now, yeah. So we're coming out of force fetch right around 8 months old. I know some people do it quicker and younger, and then good for them, nice job. But that's not how we do it. So after about 2 months, we're through all those 3 stages. You know what? If it takes you 3 months, it takes you 3 months. If it takes you 4 months, it takes you 4 months. You cannot move forward until it's done. And there's just some dogs that you just have to back out of it. You have to slow way down. You know what? They may not be able to do 3 sessions a day, maybe 1 session. And those dogs like that, you really need to talk to the owners of that dog and say, here, this is what I got going on. Fido is going to be fine, but we've had to slow down. Because when people are paying you to train their dog, there is a time schedule in their head because their buddy's dog is doing that stuff at 2 months old and yada, yada. So you have to talk to those people. But once we're done with force fetch, we get them out, we're starting to marking. We're running nice marks. They're pretty steady. Now they're not robotically steady. We're still holding on to a little short tab on the collar, and we're trying to build up their desire again. And once their desire is built back up and everything is going well, then we get them steady, pretty steady. And once they can run a nice 75-yard, 100-yard mark, landmark, and their attitude is up. So now we're just running a little easy singles, right? Easy singles. Then we start what we call 3-handed casting. And my program at the kennel is based around Mike Lardy's program, right? Everybody knows who Mike Lardy is, who is a Rex Carr disciple. So we're all come off a Rex Carr at some point. So our program at the kennel is based around the Mike Lardy program with our own twist to it. I have developed it over 23 years, and I'm still, to this day, we're still tweaking our basics. We're still, hey, let's get this out of there. Let's get that out of there. Let's do this. Let's do that. Hey, this dog doesn't need to do this. We do that. They're a little bit different, but we're the end goal is what we're looking at. So then we start what we call a 3-handed casting, and that's, some people call it baseball, whatever you want to call it. It's called 3-handed casting, where you put, now they have to be relatively steady to do all this. They have to be steady. So that's why your obedience and your collar conditioning. That's why we've waited a little bit to start this. So they're obedient, they're steady, they'll listen. So we waited. So now they from here on out, they're going to be on a long lead, a long check cord, 30, 40, 50 footer, and they're going to drag this thing wherever they go. And I would highly suggest, before starting 3-handed casting, I would highly suggest putting them on a long check cord and let them get used to it. If you don't, it will be like an alligator that you caught. It's horrible. So you need to get them on a check cord and let them get used to that. Let them drag it around, that sort of thing. So then we do 3-handed casting. And I'm not going to get into the breakdown of how we teach 3-handed casting. I'm not going to get into that. We're going to get into that in future episodes. We're going to break down every one of these steps. Step by step, we're going to break it down. That's going to be a whole different multiple podcasts. But today, we're just going to talk about the flow chart and the steps. Then we do 3-handed casting, right? And as we're doing 3-handed casting, they're still marking in the field. They're running simple marks. At this point, they're learning mentally. They're learning a lot. 3-handed casting is literally zero pressure. You put an e-collar on them, of course, in a flat collar, in a long check cord, but there's no collar pressure. It's just teaching. And they're running singles, and you're getting longer and longer with your singles. You're more difficult, but you don't want to overdo your singles to the point where they're struggling with their marking because you're teaching three-handed casting and you don't want to overload their little brains. So marking should be fun. Three-handed casting is going to be a little bit more mentally challenging. Once three-handed casting is done, then we get into force to pile.
So hold on for a second. Let me back up. Can you just give a real brief explanation of what three-handed casting exactly is?
Three-handed casting is teaching a dog to take right and left backs. If you hold your right arm up, they turn to their left, your right. If you hold your left arm up, they turn to their right, your left, and taking right and left overs. It's basically teaching a dog to cast right, left backs, and overs.
Why do they call it three-handed casting?
I don't know, Elliot. That's what Mike already called it, so I call it three-handed casting.
All right. Okay. Where's this third hand come in?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's your right and your left and your over. I don't know. Now I'm confused. I need to call Mike.
That's what's confusing.
It's called three-handed casting. I don't know why. I'm sure somebody out there knows.
So you're teaching right and left backs and overs.
And overs, yes. So if anybody knows why they call it three-handed casting, put it on our Facebook page. I'd like to know, actually, now that you got me thinking about it. But anyway, so now we've done three-handed casting, and they're really good at that. Now we start teaching force to pile. And I'm not going to get into how we do that, but we do, we do like Mike does it. They're front finishing us, they're front looking at us, and we give them right and left backs, and we force them. And so we don't start forcing them from our side. We start with the remote in front of us, and you give a left back, and they spin, we nick back, we force them like that, because that stops the flaring of the line. Once they do that, then we can bring them into our side and send them from our side send them. So the reason why we do three-handed casting first is because of how we do force to pile. We do force to pile with them front looking at us, front finishing us. And if I held my right arm up and that dog spun the other way and we're forcing to a pile, now we're just reinforcing behavior. We're not you give a right casting, they turn to the left. So now we're just reinforcing bad behavior and basically disobedience when we're trying to force to a pile. So we teach them to turn right and left back before force to pile because we're going to expect them to turn the right way when we force them to a pile. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
There's a method to the madness. And once they have, and now they're still on the long check cord. So if they turn the wrong way, you can stop them, right? So now we're through force to pile. Now we're going to get into sit to pile. And this is where the check cord really comes into handy. And now once they're front finish force to pile and you're side sending them force to pile, once you're side sending them good on force to pile, then you start teaching sit to pile. And this is where your long check cord and a pair of leather gloves comes in really, really, really handy. And I firmly believe if you watch our dogs run tests or hunt or however you want to do it, our dogs sit extremely quick. Like I've said in previous podcasts, if you don't have sit, you don't have shit. So, and this is where it comes from. And when you kick those dogs off on the side, you are going to blow the sit whistle and you're going to stop them with a long check cord and you're going to make them sit. So that's sit to pile. And then you're going to do that until they can't, they'll sit without the check cord. And then once force to pile and sit to pile are done, then we get into a thing we call the mini T, where we stop them at the intersection, give right and left backs, give overs, that sort of thing. And then once the mini T is over, we teach them the T pattern. Now, one thing that we do a little bit differently than a lot of people is we don't do the double T. And I did the double T for years. I know Freddie still does it, I think. I know people that still do it. I even did the inverted double T, which when I was younger, I was a bookworm about this stuff, and I saw the inverted double T in the Retriever Trainer by Jim Dobbs. And I thought, that is cool. I'm going to do that. It wasn't necessary, but it was cool. But we don't do the double T anymore. And the reason for that is I took that out of the program years and years ago because, and I did it with a handful of dogs when I was trying to teach them to handle. And I didn't notice a difference from the dogs that ran double T to the dogs that ran the T. I didn't notice I didn't notice the double T dogs handling better than the T dogs. I didn't know they handled the same. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, then why am I teaching the double T and spending all that time to teach a double T when I can just teach the T and get them out of all this drill work a little bit quicker and keep their attitudes up, right? So we got out of the double T. And all we do is the T. Now, once we're on the T, that's when they lose the long check cord. They're more reliable. They'll sit every single time. They'll typically change direction every single time correctly. They'll do all these things. That's when I lose the long check cord, and I'm done dragging that around. So, and then once we're done with the T, I do a thing called run by, which it's going to help you. It's basically when they're returning with the bumper and the T, you stop them and you cast them through the T with a bumper in their mouth, leftovers, right overs, backs. That way, when you get into swim by, it's an easier transition for them. I need to back up a little bit. I missed a very important point, and this is why I should get an outline, but I don't like outlines. The back pile on three-handed casting, the back pile on force to pile, the back pile on sit to pile, the back pile on mini T, and the back pile on T are the exact same pile. The exact same place every single day. So that is a known destination in all your drill work. And a lot of times, the mini T, the overs, are the exact same over piles as like three-handed casting. They've been to all these spots multiple times, especially the back pile. Do not take the back pile of T or double T or force to pile. Don't move all over the place. Don't go, hey, we're going to do it over here one day, the next day we're going to do it over there. Don't do that. Keep your back pile at the same place every single day. And if you saw the handling field at the kennel, the line to that back pile has a groove wore in the ground. I'll bet it dips down almost a foot.
Do you have a specific place on your grounds where you do that?
Yes, right behind the kennel. Right behind the kennel, we call it the handling field. It's basically 3/4 of a football field, mowed like a football field, and it's all mowed, and we use 3-inch Avery white hexa bumpers. And so they can see them. They can see them. We don't use the bucket. We don't use buckets in this portion of our drills. They can see the bumpers, and so it has to be mowed. And the back pile is the exact same place every single day for all those drills. So that was a very important thing I missed there. I apologize. But so now the T is done, and now we're doing run by. We're teaching the dog to handle with the bumper in its mouth, that sort of thing. Once that's done, you can do one of two things at this point. Depending on the weather and depending on the dog's attitude, you can do one of two things. You can either go into water force and swim by, or you can go into a thing that we call pattern blind lying and casting, which is basically the start of pattern blinds. We used to do a thing before pattern blind lying casting. We call it spin drill and the wagon wheel. Everybody knows what wagon wheel is usually. We don't do that anymore. We kind of got away from that, and we just teach our angle backs and our pattern blind lying casting. So if the weather is nice and the dog's attitude is good, now we're still throwing singles, we're still throwing marks every day. So at the kennel, typically the dogs that are being taught to handle will be taught to handle in the mornings. They'll get their drill work. In the afternoons, they get their marks every day. So once the dog is through the T and through run by, it's got a good attitude, then we go right into water force. And water force is basically if you've done all your homework and you've done, dotted your T's and crossed your I's. I don't think that's how you're supposed to say it, but you know what? That's how I said it. Gonna burn some dust. He's gonna eat my rubber. But anyway, so we go into water force, and if you've done all your stuff, water force is very, very easy. That should go real quick if you've done a really good job of all your yard work. And then it's just like it's the same step. So you do water force. Then we call sit to water. We teach a dog to tread water, and just like force to pile, water force. Just like sit to pile, sit in the water. You teach a dog to tread water. And then we do basically a little mini swim by, like a little mini T, and then we do the full-blown swim by. And once the full-blown swim by is done, we do a little drill called D-cheat that we'll get into. That's a fantastic drill. We do a little drill called D-cheat. Once that's done, then we'll go into pattern blind lying and casting, which is basically...
And how long does all this normally take now, that process?
I knew
the average dog.
I knew you were going to ask me that. 6 to 8 months. I'm guessing just about 8 months. I'm sure somewhere in there. It's not, some dogs are a lot quicker at it. Some dogs are slower at it. But
so it takes 8 months from the e-collar and force fetch training.
Yes, from. So
you're at about a year and a half ish.
What's that?
You're over a year. You're about a year and 4 or 5 months range.
Yeah,
Generally average.
You're 8 months into it. Now, with that being said, everybody's like, "Oh my God, I did it in 3 months." So have I. Congratulations. But here's what I do know, and this is where people get in a huge race when it comes to this stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, guys and ladies, if you do not do these foundation building blocks, you have nothing. You've built nothing, and what you think you've built will fall apart. So if it takes you a month to do the T, it takes you a month. Who cares? I'm going to tell you, and here's the thing. Here's the thing too, is we never go back to the T. Like I know some people that are like, "Oh, I need to work on their whistle sits, so I'm going to run the T." What? Why are you going back to the T? There's no reason to go back to that. So once all of our basics, and that's one thing I'm a stickler on at the kennel, is basics mean everything. And if you, whatever you do, do not hurry through all these basics. And everything that I just said, all the way up through swim by, in my mind, in our program, that's basics. Basics. So it's 6 to 8 months, and it's probably closer to 8 by the time you get through D-cheat and stuff. Maybe it's more. Who cares? The dog is only 14 months old.
And at what point will you start letting them be entered into seasoned HRC level tests?
You're not even close yet. You're not even close yet, in my mind. Because here's the thing. And I always tell this to the clients and people, they're like, go, let's go. We have dogs right now. Ryan's got dogs in his trailer right now that are 10, 11 months old running cold blinds. It happens. I get it, and I understand it. But in the grand scheme of things, seasoned HR titles and senior titles, that's not the goal. So what's the hurry? That's not the goal at all. The goal, you just said you wanted a Grand Retriever champion M&H. Well, then you know what? It just takes a while. And you want to make sure that you do all these correctly. Now, the dogs are still not running cold blinds, of course. They're not doing any of these things. They're running marks. They're probably running some doubles. Now, we got to be careful with the doubles because they can't handle in the field yet. So unless you have bird throwers, stay away from the multiples, because if they get lost, how are you going to help them? So once we get through swim by and D-cheat, we go into a little drill we call pattern blind lying and casting, which is basically the start of the pattern blinds. And this is where we start teaching the dogs to take angle. We start teaching them to line a little bit. So you have 3 piles, one at 10, 12, and 1. No, 10, 12, and 2. And they'll be the same distance, though. They won't be they'll be at the same distance. And you're going to be down there at 6 o'clock. And you're going to line to those piles. And that's where you start teaching them to stop and take your angle cast. So you send them at 12 o'clock. You stop them. You give them a right angle to 2 o'clock. You start teaching them to stop, change direction, take your angles. And I'm going to tell you, at this point, everybody, your overs are gone. The overs are over. Overs are over. So I don't have a dog on my trailer right now that'll take a 15-yard over. Doesn't exist. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Because here's the thing. You got to understand something. If you have to give an over, unless you're one of those trainers, and there's nothing wrong with this, unless you're one of those trainers that you only do straight backs and overs, straight backs and overs, straight backs, that's fine. That's great. Congratulations. Unless you're a trainer like I am, and most people are, everything's an angle. Everything's either a right 45 or left 45 and every angle in between. Once we get to this point, our overs they're done. We don't use them anymore. Everything's an angle. You got to turn the right way. And in pattern blind line casting, it's a great drill. You can start teaching arm angles. You can give 45s. You can give 20 degrees. You can start teaching arm angles depending on where you stop them on line to number 12. So once we do pattern blind line casting, once we get that done, right, they're stopping.
I'm just stunned at that amount of precision. I had no idea that you could get a dog to that level of precision with the angle cast. That's totally news to me.
I'm telling you didn't know. I mean, I'm telling you right now, Elliot, you get my trailer out right now. I'm not bragging. It's just a fact. You get my trailer out right now. There's 20 dogs on there. They're all grand level, master national hunters. If I give a 20-degree angle, they'll take a 20-degree angle. If I give a 45, they'll take a 40. But they're not 14 months old.
Yeah. So is your thought on the not doing the overs at all? It's like if you get to the point where you have to do an over, you're so out of line that...
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and whatever you do when you're way out of whack, and I love to see this. If my clients do this, I tackle them. Whatever you do when you're way out of whack and you give an over, make sure you scream over really, really loud with it. That really helps. I'm actually kidding. People don't do that. That makes them go straight back. So you don't mean over. They go straight back every time. It's like clockwork. I loved it. I stayed at a hunt test and cringe. I'm like, come on. But anyway.
I'm just crossing off things I do one by one.
Elliot, you are no longer allowed to scream over on your overs. Overs. So
well, I just found out I can't do overs anymore. So
you might be able to. My dogs won't do them. I'm telling you right now, my dogs will not take a 15, 10-yard over. Not a chance in hell. They know everything's an angle, and it's my job as the handler to keep everything in front of me or in front of the dog where when you give an angle, they take the angle and you finish the blind.
Because if you're not making progress towards the blind, it's a negative cast.
Correct. Yes. But with that being said, there are some people out there that still do straight backs and overs. That's all they have. Straight back, over, straight. And that's totally fine. But I'm going to tell you that's very, very, very hard thing to do, because when you give one of these dogs an over, there is nothing more momentum breaking than an over. So now you got these hard charging dogs that love to run, and now you expect to take a 10-yard over, straight over, and break all their momentum. You are much better off giving an angle. A dog will take an angle all day long compared to an over, because it's still working backwards.
Little tiny bit of a side point, but the other day I gave her a correction because she was going straight back instead of angle. And then the next cast, I gave her an angle and she went over.
Yeah.
And so
she just overcorrected.
Right.
That's fine. She's just trying to be a good dog.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's she's just trying to be, so when you gave her a correction, she was just trying to be a good dog, so she overcasted. And you know what? That's what you want. You're fine. And then now you just stop them. So if you gave a left angle and she went straight back, and you stopped them, and you gave her that left hand, and she went straight left over, stop her, give her right back, and be done. She's just
Will
trying
they
to
count that against you in a test?
Not necessarily, because you made progress to the line to the blind. You see what I'm saying? You were offline, and you gave that angle. Now, if a cast refusal, 100% they'll give you. But if you're offline to the blind and you give an angle and they go straight over, you still made progress to the line to the blind. You got closer to the line. You'll be fine.
I gotcha. Okay.
You should be fine. So now we've done 3-handed casting, and now what we'll do right after that, we'll go. Now your dog has been through swim by, has been through D-cheat, been through pattern blind line casting, it knows its angles, it knows its right left backs, it knows all these. Now we'll go in, we'll do pattern blinds in the field, on land, and pattern blinds in the water. So we will, set up a 5-leg or 3-legged pattern blind on land, and we run, and they're really short, simple to start with, and we'll do a couple weeks of those, and we'll do a couple weeks of water pattern blinds, like down the shores, on-off points, swim past points, all that destination training. And then once that's done, then we'll start doing simple cold blinds. And now you can probably start running seasoned. So in my program, I know everybody's program is different. I know Freddie's program is different than mine. Chris Aikens is a little bit different than mine, not much. I know everybody's is different. I know there's other ways to get there. I understand it. When Ryan works for me, and I've watched him do basics on dogs, and the way he kind of does it is a little bit different than how I do it. And I don't have a problem with it because the end result is the same. I'm just saying the way I do it and the way our kennel does it for the most part is what I just put out there. So I'm going to go through the steps real quick. This is how to teach a dog to handle. This is our flow chart. And just on the handling part, not the marking part. You got obedience, collar conditioning, force fetch, 3-handed casting, force to pile, sit to pile, mini T, run by, water force, water T, swim by, D-cheat, pattern blind lying and casting, land pattern blinds, water pattern blinds, simple cold blinds. That's our flow chart to teach a dog to handle.
And guys, like Chris said earlier, we are going to go through these one by one, and he's going to go into the weeds with all of this stuff. So that you will. Yeah. If there's things like, well, I don't know how to do that, we're going to get there. Don't worry. We are going to get there.
Yeah, that was a lot of information thrown out there really, really quick. We are going to break this down. It's not going to happen in successive episodes, but I am going to break this all down step by step, how to do it, and we'll do all that. And it's funny because when we have people that come to the kennel, we have this flow chart on the wall. And we have all the young dogs coming through the program. You'll see their names by everything that they're in. So when I walk into the kennel, there'll be 6 dogs in obedience. There'll be 7 dogs in collar conditioning. There'll be 10 dogs in force fetch. There'll be now, once those dogs, graduate force fetch, we'll move them to 3-handed casting, and you'll see all these different names everywhere on the flow chart. It's on an erasable board. So I can walk in there and say, hey, Andrew's got 12 dogs in 3-handed casting. I know with the dog's name, and so I walk in there, oh, okay, Sparky's graduated force to pile, now he's in sit to pile. We move them through that flow chart so we know where they're all at and where they're going. And what a lot of our clients will do is they'll take a picture of that flow chart and they'll call me and they'll say, hey, what's Hugo doing today? Where's he at on the flow chart? He's in sit to pile. Okay, so how did he do in force to pile? Did great. Oh, okay, good. So when are we going to start mini T? They'll know the flow chart. They have it on their phone. And so they ask me where they're at on their flow chart. And I can tell them exactly where they're at. And a lot of times, Julie and Andrew will keep a notebook on every single dog that is for our eyes only. But we'll keep a notebook on the dogs at the kennel, how they're progressing through the flow chart, their attitudes, good days, bad days. And I'll walk into the kennel, and I can't keep track of, every single dog, but I'll walk in the kennel some night at 7 o'clock, and I'll go out there and I'll open up their notebook and I can just go through there, and I can tell you what Georgie is doing, what led up to it, and what her attitude is right now. And that's how we do it at the kennel.
That's an amazing level of organization with 80 dogs.
It's ridiculous.
That is just an amazing level.
But you have
information to be able to.
If you don't,
right?
If you don't, you have no. I'm a big organization. I'm the most organized person ever. It drives me crazy. Unorganization drives me nuts. And you have to know, because if you don't, too much little stuff falls through the cracks. And let's face it, everybody, the little stuff is the big stuff when it comes to these dogs and training. If you don't, like I said earlier, if you don't cross your I's and dot your T's, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, I sure am excited for these upcoming episodes where we go into the details on a lot of this stuff. That is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and there's a rhyme or reason to all that stuff in my mind, and there's plenty of people that do it differently than we do it, but it's been really successful for us. And the biggest thing, like I just said earlier, is you can't get in a hurry with this stuff. Because I'm going to tell you, if you get in a hurry and sit to pile, and you got a big loopy sit and sit to pile, now you're fighting a big loopy sit for their whole life. I mean, it's just take your time, do all this stuff, and do it really, really good, and then you never have to back up to fix like a loopy sit. Or take your time when you're doing sit in the water. You're teach them to tread water, which we'll talk about that in depth on how to do that. And if you don't have a dog that treads water very well, it's really hard to run a really, really good technical tight water blind because they won't tread water. So all that stuff, you have to just take your time and do it right, and there's no hurry. There's absolutely no hurry at all. But anyway, so now
do we have time to hit a couple questions?
Yeah, we got about 14 minutes. I think we're gonna keep this to an hour. Let's hit a couple questions here.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
This episode is brought to you by Dave, a banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. Because when you download Dave, you could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's Extra Cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. Download Dave today at dave.com/Spotify. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC.
If you guys want to submit questions for Chris to answer, it's our Facebook page, Flatlander Kennels Podcast with Chris Jobman on Facebook, and you can submit questions there. We've got a master Word document where we keep all the questions and we mark them off when Chris gets to them. So join us over there and throw those questions out there, and I promise you we're seeing them and we are recording them.
Yes, we are. So let's do this question because I know this dog very, very, very well. This question comes from our good friend of ours, Pam Spears, who lives in Colorado. She owns a dog named Jet, who is probably the nicest Chesapeake I've ever put my hands on. He's a fantastic dog. And Pam, Jet should be on my trailer getting ready to run the Grand. So quit messing around. Love you. Okay. All right. Pam's question is, she says, I suspect this may be related either to force fetch or just adult male issues. But I'd like to hear you address adult dogs, otherwise well-trained, who begin to chomp down on birds when returning. Not eating them, just breaking bones. And Jet does this.
It's some serious chomp down, breaking bones.
Well, it doesn't take much to break a. It really doesn't take much. They're so strong. It doesn't really take much to break a couple bones. But I know where she's getting at this because Jet will do this. And when I trained Jet for Pam for a while, got his HRCH Master Hunter on it, he would do this. And Pam, it's not just to adult male issues. I've seen female dogs do this as well, but you are kind of correct. I have seen more males do it than females. And I don't think it's a force fetch issue. I really don't. Because if it was a force fetch issue, you would have seen it in force fetch, or you would have seen it right out of force fetch. You would have seen it crop up earlier than that. I think it can be caused maybe by some people that put objects in dogs' mouths, like crazy stuff like hammers and stuff that weighs crazy amount of weight on one side, so they have to clamp down on it harder. I don't do all that unnecessary BS. We literally force fetch with a bumper and a paint roller, and we're done with it. We don't put hammers and whatever. So I think you can cause that by doing, making them hold on to heavy things. But I think a lot of this I think it's stress. I think it's a little bit of a stress issue, and honestly, I think they enjoy doing it. It's like a squeaky toy, and usually. These dogs that do this, they'll do it with like maybe a softer bird, like a wet bird. They clamp down on it. I've seen him do that before. And how to, you're never going to fix it. Once it starts, you're really never going to fix it. But how I dealt with that with Jet was when I seen him do that, a lot of people will yell hold, like hold. Well, okay, he's already holding, he's chomping it more. When I see dogs do that, and I have one on my trailer right now that does this exact same thing. What I do on that is if I see him coming in at me, I'll say heel or here or heel with a light nick on like a 1 or 2, whatever a light pressure is to that dog. Not a lot, because you don't want to freak them out where they grab onto it more. But what you're going to do is you're going to use indirect pressure, and you're going to be like heel, here, and you're going to give them a light nick, and you're going to make them come in quicker and spin around for you. And when they do that, you're going to say sit, and you're going to nick them again and say sit. And then what they do is that's indirect pressure. They basically are forgetting what's in their mouth that they're doing that to, and they're trying to get into heel as quickly as possible to stop the pressure on the e-collar, and they forget what they're doing to the bird. Does that make sense? So at a test,
it does to me.
It does to you, right? That's what you're going to do with Georgie when she makes noise.
Because Georgie actually has this problem a little bit.
Yeah.
She does this a little bit.
It's an excitement thing. I think it's a stress thing. I think it's those sort of things. So what you want to do with that is you want to take away what they're doing in their head. So if they're coming in and you can see them about ready to do it, I know the look, and you can see them, and you're going to say heel, and you're going to nick them, or here, nick them. So they come at you quicker, and then they forget what they're doing. They're going to spin in, and you're going to say, sit. And then if they try it again, you say sit again with another pressure, and then you're doing indirect pressure, and they basically forget about the squeaky toy in their mouth. Now, I will tell you this, you will never fix this. But in training, you have to be prepared for it, and you have to be ready for it. So you have to have the collar ready, transmitter in your hand, and on every single mark, you have to be ready for it. And sometimes you can use that little indirect pressure, whether they're doing it or not. I wouldn't even wait for them to do it. I would do it almost every time for a while. That's what I did with him, was you would say heel or here every single retrieve. So you nipped it in the bud before it even started. So that if you're running a test, you just say heel, and they come spinning around because they're getting ready for the pressure. They don't even think about squeezing that bird. You know what I mean? Make it like Pavlov's deal. You ring the bell, dog slobbers. So you say here, heel. It's all immediate response to come into heel and sit down, and they quit doing that. If that makes sense.
That's really interesting because it's a problem Georgie's had, and I have been I can tell what my fix has been wrong. I've been waiting for her to sit, and then I say hold and nick her. And if I do that, she will stop. But if I don't do that every single time, she will do it. If I'm not there doing that process, so I need to be it sounds like what you're telling her to do is be a little more proactive and start it ahead of
correct. If they do it, let's just say you notice them doing it when they're 6 feet away from you. Then you say heel nick when they're 10 feet away from you. Multiple before they even start that crap. Get them spinning into heel and forgetting about it, and do it on every single and keep. And the reason why I say low pressure is because you don't want that pressure to be so hot that they drop the bird, and then you got to fight, and they're freaked out, and then they use low pressure and get them to, and hopefully your collar conditioning is really good, which I know Jets is. Pam did all his basings, did a fantastic job with him, but keep the low pressure so they know how to turn that stuff off, and they spin back around, and they quit doing that. And if you do that on every single retrieve that they have for a while, they'll almost forget about it because they're trying to come into heel so quickly. And then,
so you think there is a point in which that it will go away if you're consistent enough with it?
It depends on the severity of it. I don't know. Typically, no. You may have it under wraps for a while, and then all of a sudden one day it may creep up.
So you just have to battle it.
Yeah, but you have to be. That's what I'm saying. In training, let's just say you're in training, you kill a setup, and you line the blind. And she's bringing a bird back to you, and you're standing around, and you want somebody to pat you on the back and high five a chest bump because you did the greatest thing ever, and your dog starts chomping the bird. Like, you have to be ready for it every single time until it's over. So, but that's a hard one to fix, but it is very, very doable.
All right, next question comes from Bear Mountain Gun Dogs. The question is, what are the top 3 attributes you most look for in a competitive dog, i.e. marking, biddability, style, athleticism, problem solving, big bottom, manners, etc.? Can you order them of importance to you as a professional trainer?
That's a really good question because they're all a little bit different. I guess I would have to say, for me, is marking to me is number one. Style is just style. Everybody thinks speed is style. Speed is just speed. You can make any dog run fast through pressure. Every dog's style is different. Grace is a dog we have right now, a super nice dog, and she's a little bit slower, a little more methodical, but she's wagging her tail. That's her style. Flash, super fast and flashy, that's his style. So style to me is irrelevant unless they're really pouty and mopey. But so right now, marking would be my number one. Biddability to me is number two, because
what does that mean? Biddability,
trainability. like just trainability.
Oh, okay.
Are they coachable? Are they trainable? You know, everybody knows that 5-star athlete that went to college, but it's uncoachable. Nobody wants that player, right? Nobody wants that player because they're uncoachable. So ability is trainability, basically. Willingness to be a team player, willingness to train, willingness to accept training. So marking, number 1. Ability for me is number 2. And I love, so big bottom, that's a dog that's got lots of guts, lots of go, lots of work ethic, you know, a lot of those things. But to me, I think if you have a nice biddable dog that loves to mark, I think I think the big bottom is gonna come into play on some of that. It's already there. Manners, that's a training thing. So yeah, there are some dogs that have more manners than other dogs, but that's a trainer thing. So marking to me is number 1. Biddability is number 2, and I think problem solving to me is number 3. Because I'm going to tell you right now, that pistol dog I told you about, she was so smart. It was ridiculous how smart she was. Her son, Ticket, who I trained, got a Grand Hunter Retriever champion, Master Hunter MNH on, was the smartest dog I've ever been around in my entire life. His problem solving was unbelievable. We have a dog on the trailer right now named Maverick Hassel, Grand Hunter Retriever champion, Master Hunter, MN. Listen to this one. Maverick Hassel, Grand Hunter Retriever champion, Master Hunter, MNR, has never failed an AKC event in his entire life.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Ever. He's just now, I think he's barely 4. He's either barely 4 or not quite 4. Never failed an AKC event ever. He has 2 Master National classes. So his whole deal is he's a good marking dog. There's no doubt about that. He's got high biddability, but his problem solving is stellar. He's extremely intelligent. So dogs that have, and I'm not saying Maverick's like this, he's got better than average marking, but a dog that got average marking but is highly trainable and is a problem solver, you are going to get a long ways with that dog. Because here's the thing. You have a team of athletes, they all can't be the number 1 guy. You've got to have role players. And I'm going to tell you, and everybody that's been on a football team or a basketball team, role players make the team. That's the glue, right? So a problem-solving dog that's trainable and can mark all day long. Give it to me all day long. And that dog right there, that's a marking dog with a biddability and a problem-solving dog, I'll guarantee you that dog's probably an area marker instead of a pinpoint marker. And give me a great area marker over a pinpoint marker any day of the week, because you cannot hide a bird from a really, really good area marker. So that's a good question. That's a good one. I like that one.
All right. Well, you want to do one more, or you want to stop it there?
Yeah, let's just stop that. Let's just stop there.
All right. Well, guys, thank you again for joining us on this episode. We've got them coming every other Wednesday. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating. Tell us what you think, and join our Facebook group, Flatlander Kennels Podcast, with Chris Jobman over on Facebook.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Elliot. See you at the line. Take that aim.
Gotta strike this chord with a humble hearts. Bearing heavy chains and blue collar scars. Inevitably, you're gonna get the way. If it don't take that fight, take it to the grave.